our internet just went down, and it happened like at 3:41. And the reason I know that is because at 3:41, I'm looking for Douglas to try to figure out how to turn on the internet. And then I thought, well, I just sent out two explosive reports, a cat report and then a Substack thing. You guys have got to see it. But anyway, I thought, well, that was the powers that be that said, you got to shut off her juice and stop letting her send this stuff out. But then my son texted me, sent me a text of Donald Trump's post that he was headed over to the Federal Reserve to go inspect it, and it was 3:41. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what if all of this is related? So Douglas and I were talking about it. He's going to get the recorder in just a minute, but I want to remind everybody that Donald Trump knows how to build stuff. He will be able to walk in that building and see if there was, $2 billion worth of 2.5 billion in renovations. But he's also bringing the Pulte guy. If you haven't figured it out, it's Pulte Homes. They know how to build stuff. They're going to be able to tell. So you have two professional builders going in to see if the Federal Reserve has indeed spent the money the way they said they were. But which then led me to remind Douglas that months and months ago, I reminded everybody, I think on an audio here, why are all the fences up at the Federal Reserve? We were seeing, that Penguin 6 that rides his bike and stuff around Washington, D.C., and he was pointing out all this fencing around the Federal Reserve, and it was really extensive, and it was really high fencing. Now, that building looks like it's in pretty good condition, and you're going, the whole place has been surrounded by this fence. Okay, and then I made the comment, I think what it is, it's the globalists getting ready to position themselves literally in the Federal Reserve building to take over America. And whatever that $2.5 billion is it took to build this new operation wouldn't surprise me if it's going to fund these globalists. And that's what I have to say about that. So how about you, babe?
Oh, who, me? Oh, I never have anything to say about anything. But since you ask, I'll just say 2.5 billion. When Trump was talking to Jerome Powell before, Powell said he's going to renovate the building, and Trump's like, why? I mean, why do you guys even have that big a building? I mean, how many people do you have working here? And when he was told, he was shocked. Because how many people should it take to run the Fed? 4 or 5 people, period. They don't do anything, but don't forget, and this is what I'm going to tell you, and this will be what the outcome is, and I'm predicting this before anyone else. The $2.5 billion was to run the fiber optic cable and the high-speed transmission to come into that building, and so they had to completely redo all the internal structure, because none of the federal agencies have any good computing skills, and they needed to have that for what's called FedNow. Well, FedNow isn't even going to happen. And there's, what's the other one? FedNow and Fed Later, or I forget the other one, what it's called. But the point is that there were two systems they were setting up, and they'd already ran their prototypes, and they'd got every major corporation in America linked up with them, and they did a trial run for about a year, and it failed miserably. And then it was supposed to turn over to now, okay, it's a proven system. Everyone goes on it. In other words, yes, the U.S. Federal Reserve was taking over America's economy, and they needed to have an infrastructure far superior to the U.S. Treasury, which we now know is complete garbage. I think we've only, we're in the second or third month of actually keeping books at the U.S. Treasury. Before that, no checks were ever coded. There were no budget lines. There was nothing. Money just ran through there like water. And who prints the money? Well, the U.S. Treasury and the Fed basically have this little game. Why one has to approve the printing and the other one prints it, and then the other one controls it, and then the other one plays like they control it. This is a game they play.
Well, they had to create something called a transaction, because in a transaction, they can add fees and interest and stuff like that. If there's no transaction, that can't occur. And that's how they make their money, at the threshold experiences of going from one to another. Can you imagine what they think they're going to make when their fiat currency collapses and they offer us a digital currency, which I believe has been shot down by Congress or the president or something, I can't remember.
Well, the stable currency has been approved, but that's a little different than the U.S.
Central bank digital.
Treasury. Yes, it's actually a central bank digital currency. But anyway, the Fed had geared up because of the remittances. Remember when I told you that nobody seems to admit that the Fed was making a huge amount of money, sending back tens and billions of almost $100 billion a year to foreign countries with remittances, and then they were charging for it? So here the Fed, which is supposed to be a public-private corporation working for America that we actually pay, and remember every few years they just give the Congress a bill and the Congress pays it. Nobody audits them, and that's why Rand Paul keeps saying, audit them, audit them. This is what he's talking about, is not audit the $35 trillion we owe them. That's to audit their bill they give them every few years, and it comes whenever they want. Whenever the Fed submits a bill, every 2 years, 3, 4, 5, just depends, and then they just give you a figure and you pay it. There was only one time in history that they didn't pay the full bill, and then the Fed went out and used their propaganda control, because that's all they are. They control markets by propaganda. Remember that. That's all. That's it, period. You already have the U.S. Federal Reserve, the U.S. Treasury funds that control the stock market and that can make deals before and after the stock market comes online. So there is no free market. Same thing for commodities, same thing for currencies. So what you have here is the biggest scam. Nobody can tell you even if Trump, who's gone through, what was the school he went through to become?
Wharton.
He went through Wharton, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know the scamming going on between the Fed, the central banks, the 12 central banks that are basically federal government, but they're ruled by who? They're ruled by the U.S. Fed, which is a private corporation and answers to nobody, and they tell the U.S. Treasury what to do. So what I was saying before, the $2.5 billion, they're going to go on, and Trump's going to go, it ain't here. Where is it? Jerome, come on down. Talk to me. Where did the money go? And Jerome's going to say, well, here, come on over here to our computer room. And then he's going to see the most advanced, he's going to see something that parallels what is in Brussels. It used to be the largest computer in the world I worked on. It was for the NSA at Fort Meade. Then the economic control of Europe started to be channeled through Brussels. And that became the largest computer in the world. So the Fed is going to have the largest computer system in the world to control all the digital coins, all of the taxes, all of these things. Because what do you always hear all the time? The Fed has released a report that says that our inflation has... Those are all fake reports. Anybody can go online and see what the federal government through the agencies posts, and then you can do some calculating, and just like Bloomberg and everybody else, you can calculate this out. It will never come out to the garbage released by the propaganda machine called the U.S. Federal Reserve, which controls our entire economy. How do they control it? By lies, cheating, raising the interest rates, the LIBOR rates. Look, we're at 4.5, I think. We should be at 0. During most of his administration, it was at 0 or 1. And the rest of the countries in the world have all gone down. We haven't. We control the world's economy, the world's currency. So why are we still going up? This is an attempt at fake inflation to blame it on Trump. It's also terrible that the central banks have a third of their assets in bad mortgage-backed loans that are on the stock market. The Fed controls that too through the central banks. They tell them what the money policy is. So Jerome's got to go. They got to go pull the plug on the new biggest computer in the world that was intending to control the entire world economy through central banks and digital currency.
But I find this all very silly, actually, Douglas, because one good solar eruption can put our electrical grid back. Well, it will be in the Stone Ages. We'll be in the Dark Ages again. So all of their folly of trying to run humanity off the back of Ahrimanic machinery is not going to succeed. Because, and Douglas, I'm going to ask you to talk about this. As we know, this electricity comes from fallen angels. And I just can't see that the spiritual world is going to allow that many angels to fall from heaven to serve Mammon. I just don't see it. And then I wonder, and we could talk about the plasma that's coming down to neutralize the electrification of the earth. So let them play their silly games. It won't work. In the meantime, we need to get the remnant ready for this new world coming.
Well, you hit it there on the head. The further down you go, the more you go into subnature, into the dark demon realm. Well, when I worked on the computer at Fort Meade, remotely and on site, it was 11 stories down, and it was in lead-lined rooms. Okay, and you can't even believe these were sealed places. These places might as well have been demon lairs. I guarantee you that the $2.5 billion was to build down into the earth to create a very secure system that they think is secure, which is not secure. The solar emissions go right through all of that. There's no such thing as even, creating a Faraday cage when you're talking CMEs. But anyway, the point is that it will be state of the art because why? They thought they were taking over the world with this new thing. Now, when you talk about stable currency, let me give you my definition of stablecoin, which is a digital currency. Let me give you my view of that. Stable because they know that cryptocurrency is anything but stable. There's no crypto coin that hasn't had billions of dollars stolen from it or whatever their cap is. Huge amounts. And it doesn't go through the individual coin companies. It goes through the places they transfer the money into banking accounts. And so that's where it all comes up missing. Well, who do you think controls that? Yeah, correct. The federal government, the U.S. Treasury. So from the beginning, it was set up as a psyops. And just like the internet got out of control as a psyops, and they started the dark web, and they started Tor, and they started all these CIA psyops. Let's see if we can manipulate people. And then it turned into, it's a good percentage of the commerce in the world is now on the internet. So they can't close it down, and now it's out of control. Same thing's going to happen here with crypto coins.
Yeah, but our internet is off right now.
Yeah, it is. And it comes and it goes, and all the power's coming and going, and when it's 103 like it is supposed to be tomorrow, of course the wires are going to stress. Matter of fact, we keep seeing that a lot of times something is going on with the whole bunches of telephone poles all just falling over when there's no bad weather. Well, that would be plasma, folks. As I've told you many times, you go out, you stimulate plasma in ways they don't like, they go and they start sucking up electromagnetic energy and basically not only diffusing it, in other words, cleaning it up, but also stopping all the random spurious emissions, and then that causes the system to backfire on itself, and then you have a blackout. It happens all the time. Whenever there's a blackout, if you get a picture of it from space, you'll see balls of lightning, plasma, running down the major power lines just before it all goes out. It's just very, very, very common. And anyway, you see this all the time with lightning and lightning discharges. If you've ever been near one, I've been near a bunch of them, and they blow out everything. And fortunately, we are lightning and thunder in our body. That's our blood is lightning, and thunder is our thinking. But anyway, the point is that what's happening there at the Fed is critical. We can default on the Fed $35 trillion. We don't need the Fed. And so when Trump starts making so much money through the instead of the Internal Revenue Service, the External Revenue Service, when he makes enough money that he can drop the IRS, he can drop the debt to the Fed, because the Fed, as you will find, not only in the book The Hidden Hand, that Michael McKibben just recently released with Tyla's help, and I think I had something to do with it. But a new book I'm putting out is called The Karma of Evil. I'll be doing a video on it soon. And it's called White Magic versus Black Magic. When economy became the only control agent of culture, demons fell into it.
I just wanted to say that only you, Douglas Gabriel, could write a book called The Karma of, what is it, Karma of Evil? White Magic versus Black Magic. Because you would know the black magic since you were a former Jesuit, and you would know the white magic as an anthroposophical scholar. So, folks, this is going to be an amazing book.
You can't be an exorcist without getting a little bit dirty, rubbing up against those demons. And I was trained as an exorcist, and probably, I just told my son today, well, lucky I had wanderlust too, just like you do, my son, because if I didn't, you wouldn't be here, and I'd be in Rome as an exorcist, okay? I'd be the guy they'd be interviewing about instead of those idiot exorcists who are showmen who I'm sure the devil is going to take straight down when they die. But anyway, it doesn't matter. They took Francis down there, and they're still reveling at Pope Francis. And the new Pope, shall we talk about the 10 to 15 new things? Don't get me started on that.
Yes. We have people who've asked you to weigh in on this. You must talk about it. Now, heads up, that could have been propaganda. You know, it could have been. But go ahead and talk about it.
No, the Pope's decisions are propaganda. It's just propaganda whether they'll ever be instituted.
No. The video, they said, is propaganda. But it doesn't matter. Let's talk about the 15 points, and they want to hear from you about those.
Well, he is writing some of the things that I would write about how to change the Catholic Church. He wants to make all economic transactions, money coming and going, completely transparent. Well, that has never been. Remember, the Vatican Bank was the home of the Sicilian Mafia, for God's sake.
Well, how do they hide all their human trafficking revenue if the books are open and have to be audited?
Well, I can explain a little bit of that. You see, the Pope gets money for every refugee. Now, why does he get paid? I forget what it is, $12,500 per person. Because he sends a small amount of people, like when all the refugees left Syria and went into Turkey. There was one computer system. Who ran it? The Vatican. And they put the people's names in as they stated them. They got $12,500. That's the only thing the Pope has ever done for anybody.
He's like a Federal Reserve.
He is. He gets his tax straight up from the top. And then what happens? Nothing. Then it all goes to agencies who say they're religiously based. Look into all of them. Why do you think recently, when Trump said no more USAID and no more money for integrating refugees into America through the supposedly, he never said supposedly, but they are supposed, through the religious organizations and of the Lutherans, of the Catholics, of the Methodists, there's like a list of them. I did a report on this a long time ago. We did, and it was an intelligence report telling you all these criminal people, they don't take care of refugees. They turn them into slaves and or organ harvesting, and then they keep the money indefinitely. This is a proven fact. And investigators have gone and the one that I helped close down was called Bethany something or another. And they went and they said, well, show us the records of where these people are. No. Anyone who ever came to them that they were paid $50,000 a year per family and all the benefits, couldn't track any of them. They said they ran away. So what you have here is the Pope, who in the past, Pope Francis said open borders. Open borders meant millions of people died. Many were raped. They were carried by coyotes across the border after just horrible things. The most horrible things in the world were going on because Francis said all migrants, and they're not, they're invaders, should be allowed into all Christian countries. That's now everyone's realizing that was the biggest mistake maybe in modern times.
It's not a mistake. It was done on purpose.
Thank you. It was an evil plan. So the new Pope, Pope Leo, has come out. Now, yes, some of the things are fake because they're creating fake things, but they also created grok images of him saying what was in the written document. He suggested this document to his own curia. here are the things it changes. Women can be now truly sanctified, blessed, and ordained as deacons so they can carry on most functions in a church. You think that, well, that's been going on, but do you think the male-dominated system of the Catholic Church is going to go for that one? That's the least of the 15.
I don't know why people have this magical thing that if a woman's in charge, it all gets better. Have any of you out there seen any women in charge lately in our political scene that are really making things better? No, actually, and you can give your hate back to me. I'm a woman. I'm saying this. Women are the reason we're in such a difficult situation, a depopulation situation. Feminism has absolutely ruined the female sex.
Take, for instance, Tulsi Gabbard, the head of the Director of National Intelligence, and what she's doing. What is she, an idiot? We all knew that. We have it in our documents, in our intelligence reports when it happened.
7 years ago. 7.
And she's just waking up to it? Or how about Pam Bondi, who doesn't know there were 2 grand jury indictments against Epstein, both of which was swept under the rug because he was considered an intelligence agent. And then there was a civil suit brought by Acosta that allowed him to get the lowest determination from a justice ever in terms of the crimes that he committed. And then years later, they open it up and with no new evidence, throw him in jail and he disappears.
I'm sorry, I led you down a weedy path. Now, would you get back to the Pope? I'm sorry.
Back to the Pope. Okay, so make all the transactions of the Vatican Bank transparent. You know how many people they've killed who've been the head of the Vatican Bank because they wouldn't allow any of that to happen? He took his own summer residence, the Pope's summer residence, which is really quite a palace, and turning it into a hospital for the poor. He wants to change the aristocracy of the Italian bankers, okay, the same bankers who ripped us off, and they're in our new book, Karma of Evil, White Magic versus Black Magic. You want to talk about black magic, that would be Italian bankers, okay? They're the ones who taught the British how to do it. They're horrible, and they still to this day are horrible. And these Italian families are aristocracy that are called, I love this, I never knew this. I wondered who those people all dressed up were. I thought they were just, people with bad fashion designs in their head. They would show up whenever the Pope does something. Why? Because they are the aristocrats, the court, the literal monarchical court of the friggin' Pope. He basically says he's taking away all their titles, all their money, all their lands. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. Here's the one that I love that will get him killed. I suggest that if any of these ever get allowed, and they can't unless the Jesuit Curia, that's his inner group of theologians, allow it, and they've already come out fighting against every one of these points, except for the deacons. They might go with that. The biggest one is cardinals, bishops, archbishops only hold their position for 5 years. Term limits on the most horrible aristocracy in human history. And that would be the Vatican cardinals and the College of Cardinals and the Curia and the archbishops that are under them and the bishops underneath them. These are the most corrupt people ever. Plus, he wants to then make all of the pedophilia completely open to the law. Remember, none of these pedophiles have ever been charged with a civil offense from the Catholic Church that I know of. We've had billions of dollars of payoffs, and not one priest went to jail. Isn't that amazing? Just like the Washington, D.C., the District of Crime. You go to the church, where are what? The biggest sinners. The mortal sinners, the cardinal sinner, the cardinal sins. The worst sins you can do is kill the spirit of a person. That's when you rape a child, and pedophilia is worse than death. And that's what the priests do. And then they go and they say mass and create a black mass right there in front of you. So the Pope, Leo, has basically put a target on his front and his back and his left and right side, on his head and on his feet, and said, shoot me. But they won't. The Jesuits always kill through poison. Somebody asked me the other day, please show me proof the Jesuits have ever killed anybody. And I said, Mike, No Jesuit's ever been caught for killing. Do you think they're stupid? These are the smartest cadre of homosexuals on the face of the earth. I know. I hung out with those dudes, and that's why I left, because they were monstrous, and they were all in their head. None of them had a heart. None of them did anything moral. No, it didn't happen. And they don't have dioceses. They just run colleges where they seduce men and women, usually the men who come through the college. But anyway, and they have, 27 colleges in America, in universities? I mean, they have been brainwashing Catholic students and non-Catholic students for a long, long time. So, Pope Leo, been nice to know you. The prediction was that after Francis was the last pope. Well, he was. He threw every doctrine of the Catholic Church into the toilet and flushed it. He was the most horrible pope ever in human history, even the ones who had multiple wives and conducted wars. Francis was responsible for the deaths of thousands, if not tens of thousands, before he even left South America and they made him the Pope. And then he told all the migrants, which aren't migrants, they're invaders, to invade the lands that were basically run by Christians. So he basically sold out the Christians, sold out the invaders, was the number one promoter of pedophilia and death and drug trafficking, human slavery, on and on and on. And who cares? That's not even his domain. He's not supposed to be even speaking about that. He never, ever said anything good about his own domain, about theology and religion. Now, let's jump over to dimwit Tulsi Gabbard. But remember, who's dimmer than her? Pam Bondi. And who's dimmer than her? Well, we start going down the list. We start talking about evil Pelosi, evil Hillary. Did you see what they did with Hillary? They're saying that John Brennan knew that there was compromised evidence that Russia had against Hillary. Who cares? Who didn't have compromising evidence against Hillary? You must be kidding. I've seen straight mainstream media articles of the list of people who have mysteriously died around Bill and Hillary anytime they got in their way. And nobody, how about Andrew McCabe, after James Comey assigned him the 5 Hillary Clinton fraud cases concerning the Clinton Foundation, who only give less than 5% to their causes. Over 95% goes just to the 3 of them. 5 cases. Andrew McCabe shut down all the cases, never finished any of them, and so, but said that he closed them out because he never investigated them. He gathered up all the evidence. Remember when they sent a whole plane? They filled up a plane with all the evidence from Rose Law Firm down in Little Rock, Arkansas, where Hillary basically stole the modern technology of the modern ages, including the Federal Bridge Authority public key infrastructure. She stole the QRS 11, 12, 13. She stole the Richard C. Walker patent for the Internet of Things, the aggressive remote control of the Internet of Things. All of these crimes. And that's the only thing. That Russia, well, of course the Russians had compromised material on Hillary. Remember, she went to them, our enemy, Russia, and built for them all kinds of corporate headquarters in Sokolovo to build weapons. How about the $86 billion she gave out a year when she was the head of when she was Secretary of State, and it was pay for play? She went to 125 different countries. And when she went there, all of them donated to her foundations after she gave them money for war, because she not only had the 86 billion from the State Department, she had the OPEC money, she had the USAID money, she had other money, and she had the ability to cause the Secretary of Defense to give Department of Defense money. So Hillary ran the biggest corrupt pay-for-play in human history, and nothing happens. Pam Bondi can't seem to find those crimes. Now, I've explained to you the Epstein thing. I might go back to that in a minute, but let's explain Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard must be an idiot, and obviously she doesn't read our intelligence reports, which clearly enunciated all of these things because Susan Rice came out on January the 5th, just before a meeting happened on January the 5th, which she recorded in a text to herself on January the 20th, days before Trump's inauguration, right? And it basically said that Obama was guilty for running a third intelligence, ICA, intelligence community assessment on Russian interference. Now, if you were awake at that time and you weren't under a rock somewhere in Papua New Guinea, you would have known that they tried, when Trump was running during the campaign, 2 intelligence ICAs, intelligence community assessments, on Trump association with Russia. Why? Because Hillary's server and the server at the DNC were both compromised and had everyone was reading them. The Russians, the Chinese, everybody. That's what was found out, even by Dmitry Alperovitch, who blamed it on just the Russians. No, it's not true. It was everyone, because she was an idiot and she was paying. That's what you got with the package. You got the package with Hillary, that if you paid her foundation money, you could also get her emails, so you knew everything the Secretary of State was doing, which would concern all the countries in the world. So all of them wanted to know that, so they all had it, and that was found out early on. So that's was taken by the Russians. They knew that. They hadn't hacked the DNC. They hadn't hacked John Podesta. They hadn't hacked Hillary's server in her whatever, her basement or her bathroom, wherever it was. No. They don't care. And when they blamed it on Putin's chef came out and said, I haven't had that business for years and years, and we never did that anyway. And here are the people who are really doing the hacking, being paid by the United States government. And he pointed out it was through the Global Engagement Center. The Cambridge Analytical, which they blamed on Trump, was actually being used by Hillary, as well as 2 other British agencies that were producing supposedly posts that had Russian footprints in them that supposedly influenced the election. All of that was fake. So the only influence in the Russians on the Trump-Hillary campaign when they were running for president was what we did ourselves through Obama, through the Global Engagement Center. This was very well known, and the ICA reports, 2 of them in a row, said the same. They said that it is extremely unlikely that the Russians have had any hacking going on at all. They had absolutely no effect whatsoever upon the election. That's what was determined in the 2. Well, actually, there was one before the election, one immediately that happened almost during the election. And then there was another one that Obama, and this is what Tulsi thinks is a big deal, that Obama sat in the Situation Room, is what is reported, with his cabinet members and 20-some other people, and he said, I don't like what y'all have come up with, saying that there's no Russian interference in the election. Trump has been elected. We have to get rid of him. Remember what his first order was? Everyone secure the documents in your agency and make sure Trump doesn't get them. These are orders from Obama. He gave out many orders like these in writing. But he did it under the auspices that Trump couldn't be trusted because he was a Russian agent. Well, he never was. The ICA 2 report said no. And the third one was completely fake, and then they used that for 4 years to try to knock Trump out of office. But remember, before Trump was elected, when he ran against Hillary, James Comey, as the head of the FBI, had already committed 28 crimes of treason, which we've listed in our article, intelligence report, called The 28 Crimes of Treason of James Comey. And we listed in great detail. All of these things were well known. So where was Tulsi? I don't know. Maybe she was off somewhere, but she wasn't paying attention because it's all there. There's enough evidence that if you can't, and first off, when she came out and said these things as the Director of National Intelligence, well, that's really stupid because these were all, these had already been shown through the Horowitz report, through the Durham report, and through the Mueller investigation and what Mueller released. Now, they were redacted exactly like the new ones are, but it was all there. And that's what came out when, what was his name, Devin Nunes had his 2 assistants go into the SCIF and write out some of this stuff. Well, that was one tenth of the iceberg. It was barely the tip. And yet look at this insanity that happened because of that. So if Tulsi did her job, she wouldn't announce this to the world, which is in her mind and in Trump's mind, exonerating him no matter what happens. See, that's the way it works in D.C. As long as you accuse somebody, it sticks. Bad news sticks. Good news, no one hears that. So the bad news is going to stick that these people, Brendan Clapper, Comey, Andrew McCabe, we listed them all, Bruce and Nellie Orr, all those people, they were also British agents at the same time, Christopher Steele, all that nonsense, all the different law agencies and everyone involved in it. It's all so involved that if they did justice, hundreds of people would have to go to jail because it was all well known. It was even admitted by some of them. Remember that Lisa Page and Peter and Strzok said that they did nothing wrong. And they got off. Nothing. Andrew McCabe got off. He didn't lose his retirement after being in all the Clinton cases. He lied massively, and they said that he wasn't forthcoming. No, those were lies. He perjured himself also in public multiple times. Same thing with James Comey. But because they were pulled into the Mueller investigation and they were star witnesses in some of these cases, Comey particularly, they were given immunity for anything that came up in the case. So what do? They create a grand jury. The grand jury is, first off, if it has a jury, it's sequestered. Nobody can talk to them. If you are being charged, you don't get to know who's charging you, which is illegal, because it's like a star chamber in Britain. You don't get to know who's charging you. You don't get to have a lawyer with you in the room. There's nothing legal about a grand jury. So the minute you hear someone is having a grand jury, it means the government is gathering all the information, giving immunity to the criminals so they can't be charged again, and taking that information and hiding it. Now we know that. I used to make the joke in Comey's office are all these computers, and then it was Christopher Wray's, and then it was 3 Hunter computers, and then it was Aberdeen's computer. And okay, what do you think happens to that stuff? This has been going on since basically the Babylonian Radhanites overtook the Silk Road. Okay? You're talking about, 1,000 years BC, and the same exact Ponzi schemes, bankster schemes, broker schemes, lawyer schemes, legal schemes have all been going on, never stopped. And so there are people who are born immune into families, and they don't have to worry anything. You think Hunter Biden could ever be convicted for anything? How about Jeffrey Epstein? 2 grand jury indictments when it was found out what he was doing on Little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which are U.S. Virgin. But notice that the Virgin Islands brought charges against him and got $105 million. And that was after he was dead. This is so complicated that anyone who wants to talk Epstein probably doesn't know what they're talking about. There were 2 grand jury indictments that were sealed, hidden. Those went straight to the Mossad. And they were destroyed by the U.S. government and were used for blackmail. Okay? Then there was another case. And then that's where he got off easy. And then there was another case to look at whether he got off easy. Well, you can't arrest somebody and you can't do double jeopardy. That would be quadruple? 4 times jeopardy, okay? Not possible. That was so that he could get a new face and disappear. And so, we have the idiots, and here's what I say. No president should be able to give anybody a pardon. How can a pardon be given and overrule justice? That's not possible. And how come the Department of Justice and law enforcement agencies can break the law to catch people breaking the law? Or the Justice Department can give someone immunity who's a criminal, like Ghislaine Maxwell, they're probably going to give immunity to a liar, to a pimp, to a madam, to a pedophile. They're going to do a deal with them. This happens all the time in criminal cases. So the court can determine that in one case, they will let someone who is as bad a criminal, maybe a murderer, off like they do with sanctuary cities. to prosecute a smaller person, or that they will give the law enforcement agents money, billions of dollars, to set people up in stings. That's all illegal. So what we have now is that the system of America, Western civilization, has collapsed right before our eyes. It's in its last death throes, and it's really sad that the death knells have already rang, and there's nothing that can be done about it. You can't change these systems. They can't be changed. Why? Because it goes back 3,000 years. It's like changing the Vatican. Ain't going to happen. It's like changing the Department of Justice. Ain't going to happen. FBI, nope. CIA, nope. White House, nope. You're not going to change any of these things. They are ensconced in evil rat lines that are so deep that you can't even imagine them, let alone stop them. They have quadruple systems, or I'll call it triple so I can pronounce it. That's what the British do. They set up a company, and at the same time, they set up two shill companies that are going to shill for them when the first company gets busted, because they know they will, because it's illegal. And so they go to the second, the third, and then they shift that around and change the name and bump, 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 bump. So the British have worked this out, so it's absolutely ironclad. You can't get out of this system. And so what you're seeing now with Trump, it's called a revenge tour. But British has taken the revenge tour through NATO on Ukraine. Remember, America and Britain laundered more money through Ukraine than any other place in human history. And 200 of the $275 billion was in fact stolen by Zelensky. And now Zelensky has a multi-million-dollar home in Florida and a few others.
Oh, you just turn it off? Okay.
And we're just seeing insanity everywhere. But don't worry. The apocalypse is a happy story. People don't understand that. We've written intelligence reports on this. Read the apocalypse. For the good people, it is such a happy story that if you just put the happy stuff together, you go into ecstasy. For bad people, oh no, 10 jillion ways you're going to get caught. So good luck for these people who are doing evil, and for the people who are doing good, keep it up.